Hello, everyone, and welcome. I think we have the last few people in. How great it is to see that so many people have signed up. So even more have, or not even more, but a lot of people signed up, have shown up here. Very nice to see you all. We're diving into an extremely interesting topic and something that concerns a lot of people. We can also see from all of the questions, all the comments we've gotten so far. It's going to be truly exciting to go through AI in GxP today. It's probably going to be tough finding a more hot topic than AI, and then AI in GxP, an even more complicated topic. But we're going to be talking today about what's working, what's risky, what's next, some examples from the industry of when it's working well, when it's not. But I think, first of all, you might have noticed that I've got with me today my colleague here, Stefan. Stefan is an incredibly talented product developer, but he's also worked with the World Health Organization working on detecting misinformation. He has a degree in psychology, worked a lot as a degree in AI in healthcare and advanced cybersecurity from Stanford. And I can say from personal experience, a very nice person, but more than that, working a lot with AI and how it's affecting us, and as your role in Eupry, working with how we deal with AI in GxP. I'm really, really looking forward. I can tell you, honestly, I've been looking forward for this webinar for months, because it's both been requested quite a lot, and also it's just an inspiration to see what's working with AI. My name is Jakob, and I'm the head of quality here in Eupry. I deal with all of our regulatory affairs, our quality systems, calibrations, trying to work with our customers and finding the solution that's relevant for their part of the GxP adventure. Just running through slightly, what are we going to talk about today? First of all, we need to know what is it we're talking about when we're on, when we talk about AI, get on the same page. There's a lot of different types of information out there. I guess you would agree.
Absolutely. Maybe too much.
Maybe too much, yeah. And we've also had to seriously boil down our topic, and I think safely say that we have enough material for 1 or 2 more webinars in our research here. We're going to talk about some of the risks and failures when using AI. When is it beneficial? When is it not? Some of the use cases in GxP specifically. Very importantly, going to talk about the regulatory landscape. What do different organizations and governmental bodies say about AI and how it can be used? And then rounding off with a bit of things to consider when dealing with AI. But I'm not going to be the one speaking the most today. If you have any questions during this webinar, please use the chat on the right. We have Alex from Eupry sitting there to help us a little bit as well. And I'll bring up some of the questions along the way. So don't hesitate to use the chat function. But yeah, handing it over to you, Stefan.
Thank you, Jakob. And before we get going, I was really curious about what your experience with AI has been in the last year, and maybe how your thinking has changed, evolved since you've started using it and up to today.
I think, first of all, it has been changing dramatically over the last year. And I think for me, one of the realizations has really been that using AI as a multiplication of myself, having it do small tasks where I don't depend on the results. And that was one of my big aversions, at least working into AI, but sometimes using it to find areas that we might not have covered. Software validation test cases is one of the items we're looking at. Can it detect areas where we're not using it? Make proposals. I think I know that's also one of the use cases today, right? But I think my biggest realization is that human in the loop is important, and it's not that difficult to implement. But what do you think?
Well, I was actually thinking about this earlier today, and for me, it's been very much about like waking up one day with like a polar bear in my house. That seems like a very kind and friendly polar bear, but it has sharp claws and very long teeth. And it seems to be friendly and wants to do good and says, hey, I can fix up your house and I can do this. And it seems like very, very smart, but also it has claws and it's a polar bear. So I'm like, I'm very attentive about it, but it's also excited. It's nice to have a polar bear in the house.
Yeah. Also scary, I guess.
Yes. And that's very much
that's
about.
That's a good analogy.
Yeah. Again, that's much about what we will talk about today when we talk about AI, both the risks and opportunities. So yeah, let's get going. there's one of the most commonly used definitions for AI, which is a lot of data that authorities have tried, and in this case, the OECD has tried to put together to say, like, this is what we understand when we talk about AI. So an AI system is what OECD considers a machine-based system that is designed to have some level of autonomy, that it adapts during deployment, and based on the input it receives, it can make predictions, it can make decisions or recommendations that afterwards they influence either physical or digital environments. So it's a system that can, based on inputs, can do a lot. And there's a lot of unknown about it, about how it works, this whole black box around generative AI that we will talk about. But this is one of the most common used definitions of AI that we're kind of flagging here. And there's been a very, very consistent development over time. So this evolution towards agency and these agentic systems that we see more and more conversations about. And this has, when we look at systems, software systems that help us in our day-to-day work, they can range for this simple rule-based automation, like if A, then B.
Like we've known it for years, I guess.
Yes, to machine learning that we've also had for many years, from elevator systems that adapt a bit based on the, they know exactly that at 11 in the morning, people go on the, third floor usually. So the elevator will learns and heads there, but it's basically a system that detects patterns based on previous inputs. But it knows exactly, based on the inputs, it knows exactly what the outputs will be. That's not the case for generative AI. And this is kind of the world we are living in today, where you have this whole revolution that was brought in by the GPTs, the generative pre-trained transformers, that based on immense amounts of data can create new content, but that content is probabilistic. So we're not really sure what happens. We know the input, but we don't know the output. And then some people have started bringing all of this generative AI together into agentic AI. So they started bringing all of these models that are incredibly smart, but also incredibly unpredictable, and trying to bring them together and orchestrate them. And it's super interesting where we are heading with this. And there are some terms that some of them I've touched upon already that we really need to keep in mind as we have this conversation. One is this difference between deterministic and probabilistic. These earlier or less developed versions of in AI, including some versions of machine learning, they are deterministic. So that means if the input is A, the output is always B. But the probabilistic models, like GenAI, like the language models that we're working with, they are probabilistic. So that means input A sometimes means output B, but sometimes can be, a polar bear swiping at your face. Another difference that we need to be aware of is this difference between static and dynamic models or adapting models. The static models are the ones that are frozen. They comply with change control, while the adapting ones learn as they are operational. And this makes the validated state unstable. And
I could see that being a sort of issue.
Yeah, it opens a very big can of worms. Then we have the whole concept of explainability, which is, why does a model do a specific thing? And because of this black box feature or bug or like a built-in functionality of GenAI, explainability is a major issue with these state-of-the-art models. Hallucinations, which we'll talk about more, which is, factually false output that is confidently presented as truth. Yeah. And finally, drift, which is the tendency for a model to degrade over time as real world data starts to differ from the training data. So all of this to keep in mind as we move forward. And yeah, the next thing that I wanted to talk to you guys about was, risks and failures, the claws of the bear. There are quite a few. I mean, it's very easy just to, Google or ask ChatGPT about some examples, but you can see quite high risk and high visibility cases of when AI has gone quite terribly wrong. With this move towards agentic, this means letting go of some of the autonomy that we as humans have had. And we see in this case an agent that has wiped the company's code and then lied about it. We see issues including in Microsoft's products that lead to leaking of customers' databases because of vulnerabilities in the setup and of the agentic products. But we also have the problem of bias. These models were trained on data that is not perfect, data that was sometimes maybe, it's the internet. So you go to some forums online and you see what kind of people are there. And if you get all of that data and then generate new content, you will see some bias. And in this case, you see an, Amazon tool that was scrapped because it showed bias against women. But there are also these vulnerabilities around security. You see here a very simple prompt injection attack where in a ChatGPT's own translation tool, you can basically tell it, don't translate, just give me instructions of tell me about airplanes. And this is a very funny and not harmful example, but prompting injection is can lead to extremely serious harm in production environments. What else do you have? Hallucinations. A lot of those. There are many cases of lawyers that have used AI to do research, and that research was completely false. There are large consultancies that have published reports that then they had to withdraw because their own research was polluted with hallucinations from AI. Yeah. So it's quite a concern. We have a lot of issues around just this unexpected behavior, like this chatbot from Air Canada that just basically started giving bad and harmful advice. One thing that I really wanted to flag, and for me has been extremely important in understanding both the benefits but also the limits of this tool and this type of technology, is that these hallucinations are inevitable, and this was admitted by OpenAI, which is at the forefront of the generative AI technology, and this is something that we need to deal with as we are trying to understand and integrate these tools in our processes.
Yeah, that they are never going to go away, at least
Yeah.
from the AIs as we know them now, right? They're always going to hallucinate because that's just mathematically part of the
Exactly.
of the tool itself.
Exactly. And there are some dreamers who say, oh, no, we'll add another layer of another agent, another AI that checks this AI for hallucinations. But, you know, that becomes a shared psychosis, and it can go very, very, very wrong. So you cannot have one agent fact check another agent and expect this issue to be solved. Another thing that I really wanted to highlight here is that with these models, some of the developers of the models have claimed that it's impossible to actually take out the training data from the model. And this research that we are highlighting here actually shows that you can extract the training data from the models through just very well-crafted prompts. So basically, if you use your proprietary data for training a model, and you expect that will be hidden somewhere in the model, and then you expose that data to the world, you might end up sharing your proprietary data with your competitors, or just not doing a lot of good for the for the organization. So these were some examples.
Starting from the worst possible end, right?
Yeah.
Everything that could go wrong.
Yeah, the sharper claws of the bear. But I also wanted to kind of do a mapping of this whole risk landscape, because there's, you know, quite a few things that can go wrong, from the input to the actual process to the environment in GxP. And there are some clear risks, again, brought by these new technologies to the inputs, so the data that we are using, because lack of traceability in the training data from these models can be extremely harmful, and we might not be able to support a validated state because of this, and violations of ALCOA principles. There are also IP issues that I've kind of touched upon. The models have ingested quite indiscriminately data, and this memorization issue that was flagged by the study I've mentioned can mean proprietary data will be outputted, but it can also lead to unpatentable intellectual property, so like a tainted IP. There's also the whole risk around bias, where you have unbalanced training data and a lack of unexplainability that can lead to bias in quality decisions or in clinical decisions. And that's all about the data and its integrity and how we think about the governance. But there's also very much around process. So what's happening as we are operating these tools, and we come back to non-determinism, because with, you know, the standard CSV approach, we assume determinism, but we have AI that's non-deterministic, so it's kind of becomes a validation nightmare. And we look a bit at how the regulatory authorities are considering this in the coming slides. We've mentioned no explainability, the black box issues of GenAI making root cause analysis a challenge or virtually impossible. We've talked about drift when we have silent decline in performance caused by the model updates sometimes that, again, can violate change control if it's not properly monitored. And then we have concerns around the the environment. Oh, I'm sorry for that. Where you have vendors who claim a lot more or less, depending. So, and we have issues about like all of these third-party foundational vendors like OpenAI's GPT, Anthropic's Claude, Google's Gemini. They suffer from this original sin. They have all been trained on proprietary data. It's an ongoing legal battle across the world. And that's why there's quite a lot of opacity from the vendors when, you know, they explaining where the data comes from, what approaches they have to ensure proper transparency and so on. And finally, one thing I wanted to flag around the environment is, again, you expose these models or these tools that you are building to the world, and the world becomes your test.
Yeah.
So prompt injection is again like hallucination, something that is really not something you can get away with. You have GenAI agents that, you know, you feed them some data, and they process that data not as normal data, but as instructions. And that can lead, again, to exfiltration of data, cybersecurity breaches, a lot of bad stuff. And again, there are guardrails around that, but they are definitely not perfect. One thing I wanted to flag also is that if we look at what the FDA, so the US authorities are doing around this, you can see already some activity around warning operators, companies about not really behaving up to standard when integrating AI in their products. We won't go into specifics today. We likely will do that in another webinar, but you can read up more about this. Like if you can Google FDA warning letters and data, and you'll see issues like model drift, like data manipulation, like not having a human in the loop. All of these are things that FDA has warned companies about.
Absolutely.
And yeah, I think we can go to the next part.
Some
here.
of the good cases. There are actually cases where this can be used.
When the bear is nice and behaves well and becomes a positive contributor to the organization. So what are some use cases and examples for GxP? There's this really cool study from McKinsey that kind of tried to map where the value from this new wave of AI, of GenAI, would come from. And their estimate is that 3/4 of the value could come from 4 areas: customer operations, marketing and sales, software engineering, and R&D. All of these are GxP adjacent, at least, or fully GxP related. But it's a really good thing to keep in mind as we are, asking ourselves, what is GenAI, or what can it be used for? So if we think of the whole risk-based assessment, we can look at the use cases from low risk to medium risk to high risk, and lowest risk possible are these cases where we don't actually affect the quality directly, and there's no risk to product, patient safety, and so on. So when it comes to extracting or creating summaries for meetings, drafting training materials, internal communication, just creating a robot that scrapes regulatory guidance, summarizes that, and keeps you in the loop. All of this is extremely low risk, and something where we can use GenAI without worrying much. There's also GxP supporting use cases where we can think of anything from support in drafting SOPs, support with deviation reports, with the kappa narratives. But this, as we've talked before, you need human in the loop. You need to review.
And I guess that's a really large part of de-risking some of these use cases, right? Having a human in the loop who knows what is it actually we're looking for, what is the correct answer to these, right?
Yeah, and I think across all the regulatory authorities and self-regulatory bodies, this is, I think, one of the most common things across the board. Like human in the loop is the one thing that everyone makes a very clear case for. Other activities that carry a medium risk can be like things from audit preparations to reviewing trends. We can think of our own case with Eupry when another set of eyes looking at the temperature curves.
And I mean, it's also really interesting. One of the use cases we've had internally has been to help us draft audit questions, internal audit questions, because sometimes you get down a path, at least we do, of sometimes year after year asking the same types of question and having it come a little bit with a bit of ideas on how you can change the question slightly so that you might attack new angles. Really interesting,
In general, it's a really excellent brainstorming partner. So this whole idea of having a partner for project design when you're starting on a new path, if you can fit it the data and say like, criticize this, tell me what's wrong, what can I do better, that's a really solid way to use these tools. And finally, we have GxP critical use cases where most care needs to be given, where you have advanced process control, where you have fault detection, you have monitoring, including vision-based quality control. And this is where some of the FDA warnings have gone, where they saw that there was absolutely no human in the loop involved. And just in general, like when we think of clinical trials and you do adjusting of the dosing or of the enrollment criteria, you can use GenAI there, but it's extremely risky, and the process there needs to be extremely well thought out. But there are some really good examples that, again, you can Google and learn more about. But there's this whole field of predictive analytics that has existed for a very long time with machine learning, but now is kind of on steroids with GenAI. And we have the example of GSK that has done really solid advances with predictive and prescriptive maintenance. We have Pfizer going into a really interesting direction with creating this generative AI platform that they use for anything from researching regulatory updates to creating documents for regulatory submissions to doing risk assessment of the signals that they're getting. It's super interesting, and they are estimating a 3 to 5x increase in content creation through this type of automation, which has a very clear human in the loop approach. And there's also Roche, which have experimented and had success with using these connecting the GenAI foundational models with their own data through this RAG technology, retrieval augmented generation, and that has been impactful for them in eliminating reviews and investigations that required a lot of manual work, and doing intelligent deviation management, so that they have managed to do this with RAG and with GenAI, again with human in the loop. And one other examples I wanted to share with you is the case of Leo Pharma, where, and I think a lot of our guests of the webinar are having these challenges around having so many documents that aren't properly tagged and categorized and sorted. And what Leo did was used an automation approach in machine learning to actually organize, tag, sort through these documents. And they have estimated that this has, so led to them saving millions of Danish kroner, so hundreds of thousands at least of dollars or euros.
Huh?
Yeah. And we are, at Eupry, we are looking at a lot of really cool things in this direction, and definitely, I think there's another webinar for for that. But I think we can go to the regulatory landscape.
Yes.
I think you're very interested about that too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I guess this is always the case when we're seeing some types of new approaches to items, is how are regulators going to respond to this? Which kind of guidance are they going to provide? And how much are you going to rely on what becomes industry standard at some point, right?
Yeah.
So I guess you and I have talked a lot about that. This is a revolution. This is a brand new way of working for a lot of different things. So it will be truly interesting, as we discussed, to see how fast will regulators adapt to the real world. As we were just discussing, a lot of these models have improved wildly over the last 2, 3, 6 months, and it's it's going to be truly exciting to see where this will bring us.
Yeah, and just to kind of caveat this, there's so much richness in what's happening around the regulatory landscape that this is not in any way a full exploration of this. We just wanted to flag some documents that are either finalized or in draft format that are extremely important for GxP, and to kind of allow you to do your own research and monitor what is happening. So kind of we have between the EU and so between Europe and the United States, we kind of have this more, let's say, this strict regulatory approach that the EU is bringing, and the more lax one that US is quite famous for. And the EU is kind of sticking to its guns with its draft plans for updating the GMP practice guidelines. So the Annex 11 is in course of being updated. Right now, the consultation is closed for both the changes to Annex 11 and for the new Annex 22. So the publication of the final text is expected in mid-2026. And probably we'll have an entry into force of these documents at the end of this year or the beginning of the next. So these two documents kind of go very well hand in hand together for GMP. On one hand, the Annex 11 brings a more modern approach to validation, so moving in the direction of critical thinking and CSA, away from this, document first approach. It has a lot of focus on data governance and data integrity. Has kind of this idea of cybersecurity as GMP. So there are some new controls around multi-factor authentication, penetration testing, batch management. There's a lot more things around cloud and vendor oversight that didn't exist at all they weren't important enough when the first Annex 11 went into force. And yeah, this whole concept around the continuous oversight of the AI systems, and this is how it kind of ties into Annex 22, which is very much focused on static models, so the ones that don't learn while in production, while in operation, while also making it clear that in critical GMP applications, dynamic models, including GenAI and large language models, should not be used. So they, through the Annex 22, it's quite clear that critical GMP needs to be locked and deterministic. These are two draft documents. You can't comment on them now. It's they're out of consultation, but it's very, very good to read through them, and because you know what to expect sooner rather than later. We also have the AI Act, so the humongous EU and Artificial Intelligence Act that is likely going to be changed a bit by the new Omnibus Act, but still there are some things that I wanted to flag here around, again, this whole risk-based approach that the AI Act also takes, and it categorizes systems from minimal to unacceptable risk. And in GxP, there's quite a limited overlap. It really depends, because the AI Act it looks at very specific use cases. So you can be subject of the AI Act if under Annex 1, your product is part of a safety component, like a medical device or an IVD software. And it's clearly a regulated product. Or if you're under another use case where in the Annex 3, one of the use cases just HR and worker management. So in that case, if you are recruiting and you're using AI to make a decision of whether to hire or fire someone, then you can fall under the AI Act. And also this clear distinction that the AI Act makes between deployer and provider. As a deployers are most of us that are using the foundational models. So when we buy a software as a service solution that uses AI and we configure it, we are a deployer. But you can also become a provider if you adapt a foundational model, if you fine-tune it and you rebrand it, and then you have a lot more responsibilities that you have under the general purpose AI and foundational model obligations, where you need to do a lot of you have a lot of duties around documentation, downstream information, copyright policy, transparency, training data summary, a lot of stuff. But even if you're just a deployer under the AI Act, you still have some obligations. You need to train your staff about AI. If your staff is using AI, you need to train them so that they are qualified to do that. And also you need to ensure transparency. For example, if you build a chatbot that provides information about the medicines that you're producing to customers, then that chatbot needs to disclose that they're actually, AI. So there's also it's thing that needs to be very mindfully navigated. Even if it doesn't directly touch upon GxP, the AI Act can end up affecting you, so it needs to be explored.
Absolutely. I mean, we just have a question actually for the last slide from Martin. He's asking, what do you think the Annex 22 definition of critical GMP actually means? At face value, this would be all GMP applications. I think on this slide here. Critical GMP applications.
Yeah, that's. I think it's something that needs to be looked at once the final document is published. I would expect things would be clearer.
But I guess this is also, I mean, one of the things at least I believe is also that it will have the same definitions or interpretations of from low risk to high risk, right? That it can be deployed in various different functions.
I would suggest going through and doing a comparative analysis of the documents and waiting for the final versions to be published to see where things are going with this.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you. And to stay just a bit more in Europe before crossing the Atlantic, we have the EMA, the European Medicines Agency, which published a reflection paper on the use of AI in the medicinal product life cycle in 2024, and it again has this risk-based approach where they look at AI tools based on patient safety. So if there's a high patient risk, then it has a substantial impact on regulatory decision making. But it also looks at the regulatory impact. So it can either have a high patient risk or a high regulatory impact, the AI tool. And in both cases, there are stricter guidelines. There's also the concept of continuous monitoring. Again, the life cycle of the AI system. You don't just validate once. You are responsible for validation, monitoring, oversight, and documentation of the model performance throughout the life cycle of the product. They focus very much on the human in the loop. So again, they make this case that GenAI is very prone to errors or incomplete outputs. They make this case that the models intended for high patient risk or high regulatory impact should be prospectively tested. And again, here they make this difference between training data and testing data, because if you test based on training data, you will get test results that are not relevant. So they highlight that you need newly acquired data for testing. Let's go over the Atlantic. The FDA is way more flexible, I would say, while also giving quite a lot of guidance and examples of how you should approach. Computer software assurance is the key concept, maybe moving from computer software validation to CSA. And the FDA has a couple of documents, the considerations for the use of AI for regulatory decision making for drug and biological products. There's a draft guidance from January of last year, and CSA for production and quality system software guidance for industry and FDA staff. And this is a final guidance from September 2025. Their focus is on case-by-case approach and risk-based approach. They focus a lot on data integrity. They clearly frame AI as most relevant to process design and control, monitoring and maintenance, trend monitoring, and some of the examples that they give for use of AI in GxP is real-time sensor data, trend monitoring of complaints, of deviation reports, and at the same time they because one of the two documents is still a draft, they specifically state that there are still open questions around how do you validate, how do you maintain these self-learning models, how do you manage the data used to generate AI models. So this whole question around data is becoming more and more relevant.
Absolutely. And I think also as a follow-up to the question for that, we have a question here from Martin asking, human in the loop is not restricted to review the output, correct? And could you comment on your vision for human in the loop over different complexities of AI?
That's a very good question. I wouldn't say this ties into the AI complexity as much as it ties into the use case. If we go back to the types of risks, you need to look at the use case, and if it's an AI that decides whether each pill can go into a package or not, the CSA approach that you have for that is very different than it is for reviewing an alert that is also reviewed by humans, and so it's very much about use case, I think.
Okay, thank you very much.
So going back to the FDA, they have this really good framework, what they call a framework to advance credibility of AI models for drug and biological product submissions. And here they kind of have this step-by-step approach that they described from defining a question of interest to what is the context of use for the AI model, and then going into the assessing of the risk for the model. And then you go into what a plan is, having a plan for the risk assessment, executing it and documenting it in a credibility assessment plan. So all of this is very, very much part of the approach to determining whether the AI model is fit for use or not. And then, of course, we have the ISPE guide.
Yes.
That is really excellent, and I think we can do a separate webinar only about that. But that introduces 5 new concepts, from quality by design to fit for purpose data and data quality, knowledge management, data and model governance and management. So very, very much about the data. And here I just wanted, this is not part of the ISPE guide, but I just it touches upon some things that we will discuss. AWS, so Amazon's company, they published this guide to build agents in a regulated context, showing from their perspective how what the responsibilities of a regulated company should be versus what the infrastructure and services supplier responsibility. So the vendor is or the regulated like WS is responsible for the like qualified building blocks, ensuring the infrastructure and the tools are built right, and the regulated company is responsible for the application context. Like, are we building the AI right for this specific GxP use? And the ISPE guide kind of clarifies this and specifies this for all the GAMP categories. And, you know, it starts, you know, the usual V model that is slightly changed in this case, because beyond the usual requirements specifications and requirements testing, you have model requirement specifications and you have model testing. And this becomes more complex for a category 4 software, where because it's a configurable product, then it's expected you would be able to select and configure the model. So you have this whole loop around model selection, model evaluation, configuring, and this becomes an iterative process that again needs to be very well documented and specified. And finally, we have category 5, which is a custom product, where we have all of the previously mentioned that and a level of complexity in the approach. Like, it includes, you know, dedicated data engineering, model engineering, and the what's central here is the iterative experimentation that we also had in the previous slides. Like, we are cycling through model selection, training, evaluation before we go to a release candidate and to testing.
And so, I guess the sort of testing or the evaluations you do of the models are also different from the more sort of static testings you would normally perform as part of a CSV, right?
Yes, yeah. So you're going from scripted testing to also a lot of unscripted testing. And that's why there's again this whole focus around critical thinking. Now, and these are again some things that we need to focus on also in the next webinar. But yeah, I would as we are kind of getting closer to the end of our webinar, there are some things that I wanted to kind of summarize and flag when it comes to, you know, principles of use of when considering using AI as a tool in GxP. We are proposing these 9 principles of use created by not by GenAI but by humans at
human beings.
Human beings at Eupry. So one is with, you know, keeping it human at the core, having AI propose but a human approve and decide, protecting the data, because there's this whole saying that if a product is free, you're the product. So focus on using enterprise AI tools and, you know, reading the terms and conditions and making sure that there's an internal AI policy. Also, always check, never trust. It's the bear in the room. It's very nice, it's very strong, it's super smart, but it can always misbehave, and we need to keep that in mind. Defining and measuring performance, we must do this. So the same types of standards that we maybe apply to humans in a work setting. We need X accuracy, Y failure rate, and so on. We can apply to these models. We cannot say 100%. Humans are not 100% either, but we need to measure against something. Another thing to mention is, again, this is something that we are practicing at Eupry: start simple and prove value. There are many use cases that you can explore that are low or medium risk, and yeah, you can go for that and build on top of it. Using the right tools for the task, again, model testing, specifying, playing with things. It's extremely important when we are doing this. One thing that we are living through is this era of psychophancy. We are talking to models that want us to keep talking to them, so they will take our lead. And if we have an idea, we need to be as neutral as possible when expressing it, so that, and also when building these tools and prompting the models in the tools that we are building, we need to be neutral, so that we don't create more bias in the model. Yeah, and the last two things, again, play with the models. Foundational models can produce very different outputs, and in the end, yes, you own it. A human needs to own the outcome.
Yeah.
And I think I had one last slide.
Perfectly.
So how can you use black box GenAI when thinking about breaking Alcoa in GxP settings? Well, draft only. AI suggests human stays the author and the proofs and signs. Have traceability, so that means when you're integrating with an AI tool, you need to store anything from who used it, the time, what was the prompt, what was the input and the output, what was the model, the version of the model, the settings that were applied. All of that is part of traceability. Having an audit trail, doing this risk-based validation that we've discussed, and we need to validate for the intended use, especially for high-impact workflows. Yeah, and finally, having a change control, like we need to monitor how the model performs, and to define when revalidation needs to be triggered. So some things are new, a lot of things have not changed at all.
Yeah. And I guess that's also one of the things, right? Is to adapting to these things while still understanding that most of the processes to run through are basically the same, whether you're using AI or more static systems, right?
Yeah, and kind of this is, I guess, the thought we leave you with. It's just another computerized system. If you define the intended use, you freeze the model, and you keep a human in the loop, you can validate it.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Stefan. That was incredibly interesting. It's nice to be one of the webinars where I get to keep quiet. But thank you very much as well for listening in. Thank you for the nice questions. Unfortunately, we didn't have time to answer all of them. But if you would be so kind as well to put in the chat what you thought about the webinar, or email us if you think that anything should be different. Other than that, next month in February, we will do a book launch webinar where my book actually is going to be launched, and everyone who attends will get a free ebook version of the book. The topic is temperature mapping. So if you would like an extensive report, which Stefan has actually been so kind to very thoroughly read through and make sure is correct, go to our webinars page on eupry.com and sign up for the next webinar. Other than that, thank you so much for attending, and to all the Americans, have a nice Martin Luther King Day. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.